Welcome to Comic Book Theater with your hosts, JR and the War Dog.
What is up? This is the War Dog, and I'm here with JR. What's going on, JR?
What's going on, War Dog?
We're doing another fun podcast today. We got some interesting and somewhat funny topics, as well as some information on some new shows and possibly a few comics that might be hot. So, John, why don't you tell us what our first topic is, and we'll go from there.
Right on, man. Well, I know that we're a little late to this party, but one thing that I think that we really need to touch on still is the Bill Maher incident that happened a few weeks back. We haven't had a chance to really touch on it since it happened, but I really think we'd be remiss being comic book fans if we didn't talk about it here as well. Really, though, I'm not going to pay much attention to Bill Maher himself, even to the point where on social media, I don't even like printing his name out. That I'm that anti Bill Maher at this point, just because I think, truthfully, he's really just scratching and clawing at anything he can get his hands on to remain even slightly relevant at all. The last time I thought about Bill Maher, honestly, before he made this last comment, was the last comment he made about Stan Lee. And so, and that was back in November. Well, somebody who's relevant, you don't go months without even contemplating their existence, let alone, not interacting with them, that kind of thing. So, but really, I'm more interested in what people's responses were to it. So, the response that I'm most interested in was Peter David. The folks over at CBR.com are the ones that brought it to my attention. It was through his Facebook page that he literally wrote essentially a one-page letter responding to what Bill Maher had said. And really, he broke it down and pointed out where Bill Maher is a hypocrite and where he is really just, let's be real here, if you're listening to Bill Maher on a regular basis, he's not changed his shtick since the early 90s. He is who he is. It doesn't matter what he calls his show. It doesn't matter what network he's on or who he's been fired by last. All it matters is if you listen to him, you know what you're getting into. So, but anyway, Peter David decided he would kind of point out that, hey, cosplayers and con attendees and comic book nerds in general were basically no different, really, than a sports fan. And, it just so happens that Bill Maher is a part owner of the Mets, I believe, a minority shareholder of the Mets since 2012.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Right. So I mean, and he is definitely a sports fan. So, I mean, let's be real here. He's got no room to talk. People with comic books, and there again too, he picked the most stereotypical, lowest hanging fruit possible to pick on in the comic book community. And let's be real here, maybe 1 in 50 or 1 in 100 of the people that we know in comic books might fit into what he's talking about. But we all know multiple people that fit into multiple stereotypes for sports fans. And look, I'm a sports fan too. I'm a guy who I'm interested in the Kansas City Chiefs. I like Cardinals baseball, not so much into the NBA or the NHL or soccer, any of that stuff. But I've got teams that I follow. But the truth of the matter is, my fandom is not just one thing. And that's where Bill Maher, I think, was completely off topic. But this also goes back to what I had said in a past podcast, where people decide that they're going to take pot shots at people who write for a living. Okay, Bill Maher has writers for his show. If you think Bill Maher is funny, it's likely, very, very likely, in fact, that it's the writers of his show that's actually funny. He probably puts in a very small amount of actual writing for his own show. Now, the timing and those kind of things, he does have some talent. He gets laughs.
Are they real laughs though, or are they fake laughs?
Are they canned? Yeah, I'm sure they have the applause sign and that kind of thing too, because I mean, there again, his business right now is to be divisive, because most of what he's trying to get laughs on, he's taking pot shots at politicians, and that, again, low hanging fruit, man. Everybody makes jokes about politicians. Okay, my kids knew jokes about politicians when they were in grade school. So he nothing groundbreaking there. There's nothing groundbreaking there, nothing original with what he's doing. So, but anyway, my point still remains from a few podcasts ago with the Donny Cates situation. Why in God's name would you go to war with somebody in a war of words with a professional writer? Are you stupid?
I think we know the answer to that.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, his whole shtick is being condescending and being the smartest guy in the room or whatever. So again, that's his shtick. But whenever he's taking on people who, like you say, write for a living, they're constantly writing, constantly being creative, constantly on a deadline to have a story fit in continuity with 60 years worth of history, that kind of stuff, sometimes more than that of history, and they're trying to make something new, original, and entertaining, man, you're just not going to be able to compete with those guys in a war of words. It's not going to happen. There's just no way. I think that I compared it to me or you picking a fight with Brock Lesnar or something like that last time. That's basically what he's trying to do, and the result was the same. Because, like you say, I'm sure Peter David still has this on his Facebook page, and yeah, he absolutely takes him apart. He talks about guys who have won awards for what they wrote, or they've had a lasting impact on the comic book community and on pop culture in general. Talking about like Mouse, for instance, is widely regarded as a masterpiece, as a graphic novel. The Watchmen is consistently there on graphic novel and American novel greatest all-time lists. I mean, you just keep filling in the blanks, and those are some that they're really not outliers, man. More often than not, they're good. It, like you say, it's just one of those deals of I will put up. I can name a dozen comic book artists and writers that have had more of an impact on pop culture than Bill Maher has. And so, thinking about something like that, forget about it, man. Like I say, he's just, it's like attacking a battleship with a BB gun. You're not going to get anywhere with that. So anyway, I've filibustered this a little bit here, man. I'm not trying to do that to you, War Dog. What do you think about this whole Bill Maher situation?
Well, first off, okay, so I'm writing a comic book myself, and what I had to do to write this comic book was to write a script. And basically, I provide the script to an artist, and then he has to read my script, make the the panels, and then we add in the dialogue. So I wonder what his thought process would be on like Black Panther being nominated for an Oscar. I mean, I haven't heard him come out. I mean, he's such a brave man. I haven't heard him come out and say, "Well, Black Panther is a bunch of crap." Right, because it's a comic book related
Right.
movie, right? He'd probably go the exact opposite direction, knowing him, and talk about what a wonderful picture it is and all of that. But I mean, that the whole movie was kind of originated from the whole comic book idea. So he said he was saying in his little rant that comic books aren't literature, but then are movies not, like, are movie scripts not literature? Are movies not like important? I think he's a little off on that. I also think, he doesn't go into the art aspect of everything. A lot of people just go and they see a beautiful cover and they buy a beautiful cover because it looks awesome. And I know a lot of people that just buy the books for the covers and they don't even read them. So for Bill Maher to criticize comics and only criticize the writing aspect of it just shows how ignorant and uninformed he is as a person. His job is just basically to be an a-hole, and he's really good at it. I mean, I'll give him props for that. He's really good at being an a-hole. You can't help but dislike the guy, but
Right.
he's always he rants about stuff like this, and it just makes no sense. And it was so awesome to see Peter David come out and just really like wind up and bitch slap him. And forgive my language, but I mean, I just like the imagery of somebody reaching back and slapping Bill Maher for the stupid things that he says.
Right. No, and if anybody deserves it, he does.
Absolutely. And, the one thing he said, he said that comic book people need to grow up. And the thought that came to my mind when I read that was that if growing up means that I'm going to have to be like Bill Maher, then really I never want to grow up. I'm happy with the way that I am. I don't want to grow up to be a complete douche like he is,
Right.
And
Right.
I mean, maybe he is a decent human being and he's just doing his job. Who knows? But, when you're out there, when you're putting yourself out there like that, you warrant the criticism.
Absolutely. 100% he warrants the criticism. And to echo what you just said, if growing up means being like Bill Maher, that's a hard pass on my end as well. There's just no way, man, because like we have discussed in the past with instant message and what have you, man, constructive members of society, we pay our bills, we take care of our families. And like I said earlier, maybe 1 in 50 or 1 in 100 are the people that he's talking about that might live in mom and dad's basement, that are just not really productive people, as it were, and they're just content to be that way. But the truth of the matter is, if it wasn't comics, it would be something else. The comics are not even a symptom of their problem. They just happen to be what those people use as a crutch. So, yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly there, man.
Yeah, and I think like Bill Maher kind of just you kind of see what's wrong with our society today, that you can't even have a conversation. Like, people can't meet in the middle anymore. You got to be extreme one way or extreme the other. Like even like with the Black Panther being nominated for an Oscar, I seen people like, people would post, "Oh, Black Panther's been nominated for an Oscar." And for me personally, I don't care about the Oscars at all, so it really didn't matter to me at all. I'm 41 years old.
Right.
And I could care less about the Oscars. But, like somebody would come out and say, "Oh, well, I think Infinity War is better." And then all of a sudden, it was like a derogatory statement. But look, I don't care if you like Black Panther better or Infinity War better. I'm not losing sleep over it. I mean, we can have a conversation about it.
Right.
I personally liked Infinity War better than Black Panther. I saw Infinity War before Black Panther. And for me, Infinity War was epic. When I went into watching Black Panther, it was like I went from the epic level to kind of the Guardians of the Galaxy level. Now, I'm not a really picky comic book movie guy. I pretty much like everything. So I'm not saying I disliked Black Panther at all. I liked Infinity War better. But if somebody likes Black Panther better than Infinity War, and I'm happy for them. And hey, if Black Panther wins an Oscar, awesome. The only issue with that is really Black Panther and Infinity War probably both should have been nominated for an Oscar in all fairness. But I know I'm getting off topic on this, but
No, you know what though? That's a good transition for us because just like that, with what you're talking about with the difference between an Infinity War and Black Panther, which Black Panther has been in the news here in the last couple weeks as well with the Oscar nomination and that type of thing. To me, it's great that any comic book movie is getting its just dues finally. I believe that there have been a couple of them, and a lot of them will get nominations for special effects work or CGI work, that kind of stuff, but they never get the what are considered the main awards, the best lead actor, actress, best director, best film. They don't get those kind of nominations normally. And for any comic book movie to get that means that in the future, likely now you will start to see more of them get those nods as far as at least nominations. You got to be nominated before you can win. It's kind of like making the playoffs and to go back to sports and, you got to make the playoffs. If you're gonna win the championship, you got to make the playoffs first. You got to get nominated before you can win. But I think in the future will make it easier for some of these pictures to get nominated. Now, there are some people that I have seen that have taken the stance of it being not good for comic books, which I disagree with personally, but I'm not saying that they don't have at least a sliver of a point to it, which is that there's some feeling among some comic book fans that the reason Black Panther was nominated was because of the social justice aspects of the film and the fact of the primarily African American cast. Now, look, I don't know what's in the people who nominate though. I'm not going to judge what their motives are really, but will I say it's far-fetched that would be the case? I don't think it's far-fetched, but I'm not going to tell you I can read their mind either. Like I say, I'm just happy that a comic book movie got nominated, for crying out loud.
Yeah, me too. And the one thing about Black Panther that I'll give it credit for is that the females in that movie they were phenomenal. I mean, to have a movie that's called Black Panther, and then the three female characters just really just dominate the movie. I remember just sitting there in my living room watching it and thinking, "Oh my God, I love these women. They're fantastic." My only real criticism of Black Panther is that you can tell that it was made now, and I'm a 1980s person, so like if Black Panther was made in the 80s, Wesley Snipes would be kicking, Samuel L. Jackson into trees and stuff,
Right.
bouncing off of trees and fighting, and instead of Black Panther being tackled by 15 different monsters or people, he would actually have a circle around him and he would be doing Bruce Lee moves and taking them out,
Absolutely.
And that's just the time that I grew up in. I would have liked to I was really excited for Black Panther when he showed up in Civil War. That was one of the most exciting parts of that movie. And that again is another movie that to me is not Oscar worthy. I would have liked to see a little bit stronger character, but if Black Panther wins, like you said, hey, it's a good thing for the comic book community, and hopefully more films get recognized. But one of the sad things I will say is that that Thor, for instance, is not going to win an Oscar or anything. And I mean, nobody cared about Thor until Chris Hemsworth started playing that guy, and
Right.
Thor has become probably one of the most liked characters in all of these movies. Even in Infinity War, one of the best scenes is the Wakanda battle scene, and when Thor comes flying out of the sky with a Stormbreaker, and it's like, holy crap! This now things are going to start getting good. That's what I have to say on that.
Well, one real quick thing too. You went back to Infinity Wars. I want to say one thing about Infinity Wars. I think actually hurt it. I think that because it was an installment in a series. I don't know if you remember this whenever it first came out, but it was actually panned by a great deal of the film critics that saw it. Comic book fans look at it as an episode in a series of an ongoing story arc that started with Iron Man 1. And we look at it and we see that it's been building and building and building. And even if it's only 3 to 5 minute post credit scenes, it's been building it this whole time. It's been building. The critics looked at it and did not see a beginning, middle, and end to the story. They saw what Infinity Wars was and where it's coming in there at the end of Thor Ragnarok, flowing in through, and now you've got Ant-Man and the Wasp and some of these other movies that have showed up, and they just weren't grasping where it was going, and that this is really one of those movies that is a legit part one. This is Thanos's arc in the story, and we got to wait for Avengers Endgame to get the resolution that everybody is looking for.
But didn't one of the Lord of the Rings win an Oscar? I don't know too much about the Oscars, but I think Lord of the Rings was nominated for something.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I love the Lord of the Rings movies. As far as if they're on TV, even if I'm not actively watching them, I'll absolutely put them on. And, kind of as background noise, I do the same thing with Harry Potter movies when they're on, just great movies. But yeah, I don't really remember if they won any Academy Awards other than, again, I think they got treated a lot like, if memory serves, the ones that they would have won would have been for the special effects that they were doing and not for best movie, not for best actor or director, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I think you really made a good point though in this conversation that Black Panther was kind of a standalone, and so for anybody that wants to argue, oh, it's not worthy or anything like that, I mean that's a good point. It is a standalone. They created a whole new world. I can't argue with that. I mean, I think after having this conversation, I'm a little bit more okay with saying, okay, yeah, Black Panther probably, maybe it does deserve an Oscar. And I have nothing against it. I enjoyed the movie and I hope it wins.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think really whenever, as long as people aren't just trying to be obtuse on purpose, that's where all comic book fans end up at the end is, look, it's going to be good for comic books, for comic book movies in the future. If it wins, it gives them a little more cachet than just saying, hey, look, not only is it like backing up the Brinks truck at a movie studio, it just pours in money, but it can be actually looked at as a critically acclaimed film as well. So yeah, definitely there. Real quick, we're off on this topic of movies and stuff. I'm curious to know, since we're kind of going that direction this week, what kind of shows are you watching on TV and Netflix and stuff, man? Are you got any new shows that you're picking up?
Yeah. First off, this afternoon I watched Doom Patrol on DC Universe. And you and I had talked about this the other day. Like, I don't think either of us really know too much about Doom Patrol. And so the excitement, I didn't go in with high expectations, but after watching it, they did a really good job on episode number 1. It was kind of like an origin story for 3 of their characters, but it wasn't like it wasn't the whole story wasn't just the origin story. They introduced you to the characters and you got to know the characters. A lot of it was about Brendan Fraser being Robot Man and how he became Robot Man. And, it kind of had this dramatic tug at your heartstrings kind of a story with some comedy. And the characters, by the end, you really were rooting for them. And I was really enjoying it. It's on DC Universe. You can go on the DC Universe and get a 7-day free trial. I know Titans has all the episodes on there. It may be best to wait till Doom Patrol is over, then get your 7-day free trial. But because I seen a few trailers on it, I really wanted to watch Doom Patrol. Also, Brendan Fraser in the right parts has been pretty entertaining. And I thought he did a phenomenal job so far as Robot Man. I can't wait to see the next one. So there's my little rant on Doom Patrol. So why don't you tell me about something that you're watching?
Well, real quick, I will say that I watched the trailer for Doom Patrol. I'm glad that you enjoyed it because and this is just me being completely honest about it. The trailer that I watched didn't do it for me. I don't know a name of until you said Robot Man. I didn't know a name of a single character in Doom Patrol except in the trailer, except for Cyborg. I looked at that and I'm like, well, yeah, that's Cyborg, but it's a little shaky. It looks, and I'm not knocking CW for what it is that they do. I watch The Flash religiously. Love that show. This season of the Green Arrow has been as good as any season of the Green Arrow has been in a long, long time. But going back to Doom Patrol, I looked at it and I thought to myself, that cyborg looks like the type of cyborg that they would have on a CW show. And so I was, like you say, it didn't do it for me. But I'm glad that you enjoyed what you saw because that's, that gives me a little bit, that gives me a glimmer of hope that if I decide to check it out at a future date on a free trial or maybe I decide to pony up and get the DC streaming service, it will give me something extra to watch there. Now, I will tell you a show that it came on my radar whenever it very first was said it was going into development, but then I totally forgot about it until the night that it aired, and I didn't even catch it whenever it aired for the first time. I had to catch it on the replay. But it is Deadly Class that's on Sci-Fi, and it's a bit hard to describe. It's a it's a high school that is basically teaching people to become assassins. And so you have some of that teenage angsty stuff going on with it, but in a very humorous way. And it's set in the 80s, so it's very punk rocky too. And so they really do a good job of getting a lot of the stereotypical 80s. There's a guy from the Soviet Union there. There's Mexican cartel folks. There's Yakuza. The main character is just some nobody that just had been homeless. They decided to pick him up based on a reputation that he had done something that it turns out that he hadn't. I'm trying my best not to spoil it, but to kind of whet people's appetite for it. And it has been, like I say, it's been really, really entertaining. I believe they're on episode 5 of 10 episodes, so they're halfway through. But man alive, it's been wildly entertaining. And I'm trying to think here. I want to make sure that I don't misspeak whenever I talk about who's in it. but somebody that you would know from Doctor Strange is Benedict Wong, the guy who played Wong for Doctor Strange. He's in it, and he plays the headmaster of the school, so he gets quite a bit of screen time. Also, Henry Rollins is in it. He plays a straight-laced, nerdy teacher, which is, if you've seen him in Sons of Anarchy or any of his other roles that he's played, it's not normally who he plays. He plays a wide range of characters, but in this one, he's kind of like he's a chemist basically, and he plays it well. But anyway, just so far, it has been a really good period type of show, and I really think that they're trying to capitalize on some of the success of the Americans on FX, that kind of thing, going with that nostalgia feel from the 80s.
Yeah, like Stranger Things and stuff too.
Right. Absolutely. So they're definitely bringing some of that. I mean, the girls have big hair. Great feel for the show. It's been one that, while Legion is on hiatus, and since The Tick hasn't really started production back yet for Amazon, it's filling a nice void in my TV watching.
It's always nice to have those shows to fill your void. So there's one other thing, like Doom Patrol. When I was thinking about it, it was like, how do I compare this to anything? And I'm not saying like Watchmen story wise, but like Watchmen, nobody really knew who the characters were, and you kind of like learn the story of the characters, and that's kind of where Doom Patrol kind of. I kind of felt that way for me a little bit. Like I learned about the characters and I started to really appreciate and like the characters. Another one that I was watching, I turned it on this afternoon and I was thinking about just, turning it on and taking a nap. It's called The Umbrella Society, I believe.
Umbrella Academy?
Umbrella Academy, yes. Yes, and there's actually a comic book out there for Umbrella Academy. And I'll tell you, man, I watched the first episode and my eyes stayed wide open through the whole thing. It's really, really good. It's about some like superhero powered kids who grow to be adults, and then they have to try to figure out like I guess the world's going to end in like 8 days or something. I don't want to spoil it too much, but it was really good. They have some great music in the show too. So like that would be another one I highly suggest. I mean, after the first episode of that one, I was hooked. I can't wait. Probably after this podcast, I'm probably going to jump on and finish watching one or two more episodes before I go to bed. That's all I really got on shows. I did watch The Punisher, and I thought that was pretty good. I hope they continue to do The Punisher in one way or another. It did kind of have there was the action parts, but there was a lot of filler story. Sometimes it seems like a little bit too much filler, but overall, I did enjoy The Punisher. Have you seen The Punisher at all?
I am a season behind on that. I fully intended to binge watch the second season, but have not got around to it. I thoroughly enjoyed the first season. The first season was amazing. Not quite as violent as, look, if you're watching The Punisher, you're expecting violence.
Oh yeah.
Anybody who knows anything, now Bill Maher may not, but real actual comic book fans, they see The Punisher, they know there's violence on the way, regardless of where he shows up. If he's showing up in an Archie comic book, it's going to be more violent than a normal Archie comic book would be. So, but anyway, yeah, I'm a season behind on that one. I knew about Umbrella Academy because my daughter and some of her friends were into that comic book well in advance. In fact, just on speculation, they would have been speculation bias for me if I had seen them before I knew my daughter and her friends were into them. But the Free Comic Book Day Umbrella Academy is has been a reasonably hot, especially for being a free comic book day book, by the way, has been a hot comic book for a couple of months now. And so has number one.
Yeah. I just went on to eBay. I started watching it this afternoon, and I was like, I wonder what this comic book sells for on eBay. And I found out that it was a free comic book day book. So I did a little bit of research, and it said that even though it's a free comic book day, it doesn't mean that people really picked it up and really cared about it.
Yeah.
So it's selling for upwards of $20-$30 at this point.
Yes, it is.
Issue 1 has the first appearance of another one of the characters. There's actually, I think there's 7 children that start off, and 6 of them have powers, and the 7th one has no powers. And I believe that the first appearance of the one with no powers is in that. It's not the free comic book day one. It's the next one that came out, the number 1.
Right. Yeah, like you say, that's one of them. Then the other one that my daughter has is there was a ash can that was given out, I believe, at San Diego Comic-Con. And that one it's a little more high price than it's not just a dollar book either. But yeah, in the vein of free comic book day books that are actually good ones to pick up, we could probably do half a show on something like that, of free comic book day books that have ended up becoming a more hot commodity. Because let's be honest here, most of your seasoned collectors look at the free comic book days books and they might grab them for a little bit, but honestly, aren't you really giving them to a kid at the end of the day? Unless if it's obviously, unless if it's for mature readers only, which they have those too. But if you're grabbing the Amazing Spider-Man and the Tick and the DC sampler and those kind of things, you'll thumb through them. And generally speaking, they don't get a bag and a board because they were free. And historically, you think to yourself, not really an investment comic book, not something I have to really take that great big care of. But there's a fistful of those free comic book day books out there these days that if you have a stack of them, like you said, $20 for the Umbrella Academy one. I know that there's a Doctor Who one that's commanding in that $10 range because it's a first appearance of the 13th Doctor or some such thing. I believe there are 1 or 2 Spider-Man ones that have gone up in value. There's, I want to say there's an Infinity Gauntlet one that's gone up in value. There's a couple of them, especially here recently, that have actually gone up in value where, if you were a shop owner and, a lot of times those books will end up in 50-cent bins after free comic book day because they didn't pay nothing for them. They had to pay for them to get them to you, and they might have got a sweet deal on them or whatever, but they still paid money to get those books in so that they could be then given away as a promotional product. So yeah, they definitely, some of them do have some value these days.
Yeah, I guess this is a good segue into a few of the hot comics that I think might be sleepers. But back to that free comic book day, I know the first appearance of Bloodshot's daughter was like Exo Manowar free comic book day book. And with the Bloodshot movie coming out and Vin Diesel playing Bloodshot, you never know. I mean, I've read some Bloodshot, and his daughter is actually a pretty interesting character. She's almost like X-23. So, I guess to start off the whole speculation thing, that would be one that maybe, like, if you don't have a copy, you might want to see if you could pick one up from the 50-cent bin and get the first appearance of Bloodshot's daughter. There's 2 other ones that kind of came to me the last couple of weeks. Detective Comics 1000 is coming out, and the main villain in that story I read was Arkham Knight. And the first appearance of Arkham Knight is Batman Arkham Knight number 1. And I picked up like 2 copies of it this week, 2 different variants. And I think I paid like under $10 for both of them. but that's pretty good. That's not too bad for a first appearance. And if the character's showing up in Detective Comics 1000, it makes me think that maybe they have some plans for this character to expand in the future. The other one that I picked up recently was the first appearance of John Kent. That's Superboy. I've been reading. I've never been really a big Superman comic book collector. I've always liked the Superman movies, but I've been reading the Superman series. I think Bendis is writing it, and in issue number 7 and issue number 8, John Kent goes off into space with his grandfather, who's somehow reincarnated. I don't think I read the story before that, but he comes back to Earth and he's like 2 years older, and he's really a cool character, and I was really blown away. Like, oh my, like Superboy. Usually you're like, yeah, whatever, that's in the dollar bins, but this Superboy is actually pretty interesting, and I'm hoping that DC continues with this and continues to expand on this character and make him interesting. That's what I got on some speculation. You got anything else that you want to talk about?
Well, actually, yeah, we've been discussing some stuff that's coming for future podcasts for quite a while now. And so I think actually, since we're kind of approaching towards the end of this podcast, I think now you think it'd be a good time for us to let that cat out of the bag?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right on, dude. Right on. So, coming in March 8th and the 9th, there is Branson Comic Con 2019, and they have extended to me the opportunity to go and to meet some of the guests that they have there. And so one of the first folks that I hit up, and I believe that the week after this, after we get this taken care of, we're actually going to do a special podcast for us anyway. It's not exactly in our wheelhouse, but something that I know you and I both enjoy and have friends who do this quite a bit with cosplaying. And so I actually have the opportunity through Branson Comic Con to meet AZ Power Girl. Kara Nicole is going to be there as a guest judge of the cosplay contest that they have every year. And so I'm actually going to get to sit down with her for a few minutes and actually interview her and talk to her about what it's like to be a professional cosplayer, and to see, just get a peek into the mind of what it takes to be a cosplayer. And, maybe, I don't know, I might find a way to ask her about Darth Jar Jar. That might come up in conversation. I don't know.
Oh, I hope it does.
Did you say you hope not?
Oh, I hope it does.
Well, I mean, I'm sure she's listening to the podcast, so it's not going to come as a shock to her.
I hope she is. Or we might not let her on here.
Yeah, thanks. You just scared her away. She's going to instant message me any minute and say, "Yeah, I listened to you guys' podcast. No thanks." No, actually, she's been super accommodating as far as setting up a time to talk to her. I'm hoping to get a few other guests from there as well, but that's in the future. I'm not worried about that right now. Right now, I'm just super stoked that we're going to have Karen Nicole on the podcast for us, and that's going to be really exciting for us. Like I say, I enjoy cosplayers. I'm not a cosplayer. I know cosplayers, but it'll be interesting to see what that lifestyle is like.
Yeah, I think so. She actually, I think she appeared on the Changeling cover, which is a book that's done by Antonio D. And I think she was on like 3 or 4 of the covers as the cosplay variant. So I'm familiar with her from that. Antonio D is also another potential guest. If anybody's listening to this and you have any questions that you want us to ask, Kara did tell John that try to come up with something new and original. Don't ask me the same old questions that I usually do. So, like, if you're listening to this, there's probably either on Facebook or SoundCloud, an area where you can make some comments. So if you have any questions that you want us to ask Kara, by all means, just put it into the comments. And if you have any comments on any of our shows, please, leave the comments. And I try to respond to every comment that anybody ever makes on anything that I do, just to build friendships and hear what other people's thoughts are.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that's the right way for us as a podcast to interact with folks who are willing to take the time out to listen to what we have to say. Is absolutely, we value what you have to say. Now, if you ask a question and I don't get around to asking her, we do have a limited time. She can't spend the entire time hanging out, chilling out with me. She's got responsibilities while she's there. She's got to promote herself too. Now, just so you guys are aware too, pretty much if you type in AZ Power Girl into any of the search engines for any of the major social medias, you can absolutely follow her on Facebook, Instagram, all basically everywhere. So definitely do that. That would be awesome. Because like you say, she's helping us out a great deal by being a guest for us, and hopefully we help her out by who knows, maybe some of you guys are not familiar with who she is. Obviously she cosplays as Power Girl, but she cosplays as a ton of different characters. And she's not, let me also be clear too, she is not just a model for, how some cosplayers kind of get that rep of they're basically just dressed in a costume and kind of getting paid to make an appearance and that kind of thing. Kara's got real nerd cred, guys. And if you do follow her on Instagram or Facebook, absolutely you'll find out that she's a legit nerd. She's not just dressing up and pretending. I've already talked to her a little bit about a few things just to kind of get an idea of the person that I'm going to be interviewing. And it doesn't shock me, but on the other hand, it is a pleasant surprise to know that like you say, not just somebody who dresses up as comic book characters, but has an actual interest in comic books and that kind of thing too. So, but anyway, I really don't want to spoil too much about what we're planning on the interview either, because I definitely want everybody to be excited about listening to the interview whenever we have it for you.
I agree, and it would be definitely interesting to hear how she became a nerd. Because I know she's a very beautiful lady. I've seen AZ Power Girl, but the story of her becoming a nerd is probably one of the most interesting parts to me. Though that's probably my biggest question is, how'd you become a nerd?
Oh yeah, no, and actually that was one of the first things that I asked. And I will tell you guys too, she has a YouTube channel as well. Highly recommend going and watching her YouTube channel. Okay, I'm just gonna let you in on a few things here that just to kind of, and this is something else that I appreciate about her with what she does on social media and that kind of thing, is she's very transparent about who she is and what she does, those kind of things. But just to give you an idea of how transparent she is to her fans and to the people who follow her, she has run for government office in the past. She does some stand-up comedy occasionally too. We're, like you say, these are things that if you follow her, you're not shocked to find those things out. but on the flip side, like you say, it's not just an empty suit there. I promise you guys, this will be one of the most entertaining interviews that you'll listen to on a podcast from anybody's podcast.
Maybe we should invite Bill Maher.
She would rip Bill Maher apart. I promise you. I promise. Like I say, I've spoken to her through instant message, those kind of things, and tried to do some research. Bill Maher would not have a shot. He would walk away with his head in his hands. He might be crying. It would be bad news.
All right, so we're approaching that hour mark. I think we had a pretty good show here. Is there anything else you got to say before we wrap this up?
No, man, I'm just glad we got back on the mic again, man. Guys, thank you so much for joining us again this week. I know we had a layoff there for a while due to some health issues and that kind of thing, so I really appreciate you guys joining us again this week. If you guys do have any questions that you want us to ask, have any topics, you can definitely find us on Facebook. You guys know how to reach us. Tell a friend, man. Turn somebody else onto the podcast. It'd be greatly appreciated. It's super helpful to us.
Yes, thank you, everybody. This is a wrap. War Dog and JR.